On November 24, 1971, a man traveling under the name Dan Cooper boarded a flight from Portland to Seattle, ordered a bourbon and soda, and handed the flight attendant a note. When she didn't read it, he leaned in and told her he had a bomb. He opened his briefcase to reveal wires and red cylinders and laid out his terms: $200,000 in $20 bills and 4 parachutes. After releasing the passengers in Seattle, the plane took back off toward Reno. Somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, Cooper did something aeronautical engineers didn't even realize was possible mid-flight. He lowered the aft stairs of the Boeing 727 and jumped into a freezing rainstorm. Despite a half-century of intense investigation, he was never seen again. Today, this remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in commercial aviation history. This map shows the flight path of the hijacked 727 heading south from Seattle. You might wonder why the military jets trailing the airliner didn't just mark where he landed. The problem was the math. The 727's airspeed was fluctuating, and nobody knew exactly when Cooper jumped. More importantly, nobody knew how long he stayed in freefall before pulling his ripcord. With every second that ticked by, the potential search grids expand exponentially. And then there was the weather. It was a moonless night, completely obscured by cloud cover, with freezing rain and wind speeds whipping at 200 miles per hour. Trying to find a single man wearing a business suit in that dark, rugged wilderness was practically a geographic impossibility from the second he stepped off the stairs. Without a landing zone, the FBI had to look elsewhere. Their entire strategy shifted to the physical items the hijacker left behind in his seat. Agents scoured the aircraft and found 66 latent fingerprints, a single strand of head hair resting on the seat, and 8 filter-tipped cigarette butts in the ashtray, specifically the Raleigh brand. But the chain of custody for these items was deeply flawed. The FBI crime laboratory preserved the hair on a microscope slide, only to discover in 2002 that the sample had been lost. Worse, the cigarette butts were inexplicably destroyed years earlier at an office in Las Vegas. Because of these early evidence handling errors, modern investigators were permanently robbed of pristine biological samples that could have provided a clear DNA baseline today. In 1980, the case caught a break. A young boy digging along the banks of the Columbia River near Vancouver unearthed $5,800 in damaged $20 bills. The serial numbers matched the ransom cash. For decades, the leading assumption was that the money washed into the river the night of the jump. But in 2020, independent scientists analyzed the bills using diatoms, microscopic algae that attach to objects submerged in water. Analytically, this timeline illustrates the finding. The specific species of diatoms found on the cache only bloom during the spring. Furthermore, the bills showed evidence of exactly 1 season of exposure. This biological evidence proves the money did not enter the river during the November storm. It means the cache was likely buried or moved months after the hijacking actually took place. The most critical artifact left behind was sitting on seat 18E, Cooper's black clip-on necktie, sold exclusively at JCPenney. In 2001, the FBI attempted to extract DNA from the fabric, but they found multiple mixed genetic profiles. Without knowing which partial sample actually belonged to Cooper, the results were inconclusive. Eventually, civilian researchers got permission to examine the tie, pivoting away from genetics and instead using electron microscopy. Intrigued, this microscopic zoom into the woven fabric shows what they found, highlighting microscopic particles of unalloyed titanium, bismuth, and other rare earth metals trapped deep between the threads. In 1971, those materials were highly uncommon. Finding them shifted the entire profile of the suspect, from a rogue criminal to an insider, likely an engineer or manager working in a chemical or aerospace manufacturing plant. We now possess the technology to find invisible metal flakes on a 50-year-old department store tie. Yet, despite this extreme precision, the FBI officially closed its investigation in 2016. Trace evidence can point us toward a specific factory or an industry, but without a pristine DNA baseline or a body for comparison, science cannot attach a specific name to the crime. In the Bureau's absence, a dedicated community of amateur sleuths and professional scientists have stepped in, continually testing new theories and hunting for the remaining parachute and the missing cache. The artifacts left behind on Flight 305 offered just enough scientific data to fuel the chase, but they remain degraded enough to keep the true identity of Dan Cooper a secret forever.